Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Ms. Skokin back with geometry, and we are at the last section that we're going to be working on in chapter 12, circles in the coordinate plane. This is a direct tie-in to what you're going to see in Algebra 2, where you're going to be talking about conic sections. Circles are one type of conic section. And to just give you a very brief understanding of what that means, imagine that we have a cone, and imagine that we have a plane that slices through the cone perpendicularly. What is the cross section that we're going to see when we pull that apart? And you are correct if you guessed circle. So this is, again, one type of conic section that you'll be discussing next year in Algebra 2. We're going to be discussing the kind of baby steps into it here in geometry. Our objectives are write equations and graph circles in the coordinate plane and use equation and graph of a circle to solve problems. So vocabulary, equation of a circle, center of a circle, and radius of a circle. We are familiar with the center of a circle and the radius of a circle, but we're going to be learning about the equation of a circle through this section. We're going to start off with a warm-up in which you are going to be using the distance formula to find the distance to the nearest tenth between each of the points given to you in questions 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to recommend that you pause the video right now and work through these questions, but just in case you have forgotten the distance formula, let's go ahead and write it down for you. We're going to say distance is equal to, and x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. We're going to take a square root of the whole thing. So use the distance formula for numbers 1, 2, and 3. When you're ready to check your answers, turn the video back on. Here is the work and the correct answer for number 1. Here is the work and correct answer for number 2. And here is the work and the correct answer for question number 3 of the warm-up. All right, that does it for questions 1, 2, and 3. Now let's take a look at question number 4. What we've got here is a relationship between an x and a y, x being the independent variable and y being the dependent variable. And what your job is to plug in the x and get the y. So let's take a look at what that looks like. You can see in the little cloud the equation that we're going to be plugging into. So we'll start with x is equal to -1. So y is equal to -1 minus 14, giving us y equals -15. And that means that we have an ordered pair of -1 comma -15. I know you remember this from Algebra 1. We plug in now a 0 and get a y value of -14, and again we have an ordered pair of this time 0 comma -14. When we plug 1 in for x, we end up with a y of -13, and then we have an ordered pair of 1 comma -13. And last of all, we're going to plug in an x value of 2, and we're going to end up with an ordered pair, an ordered pair of 2 comma -12. If you need some help with this, let me know. We can discuss it in class or in extra help. This is, again, just plugging in the way that you learn to do in an XY table in your probably pre-algebra and algebra 1. The equation of a circle starts out with the distance formula. And we know that the radius is always the same distance from the center of the circle to every single point on the circle. So we're going to call wherever the point is on the circle x comma y. We're going to call the center of the circle h comma k. And this is just so that we can tell them apart. So if we plug into the distance formula using the points h comma k and x comma y, you can see that what we end up with when we square both sides gives us r squared, the radius, is equal to x minus h squared and y minus k squared. And we're going to be using this to help us out with coming up with the equation of a circle when we have a circle or we have information about the circle, such as the radius or the center, or in some cases some other information. So let's take a look at an example. All right, up here we have our equation of the circle that we were using just a minute ago, and we're going to start out to write the equation of a circle with a center of 2, 2 and a radius of 4. So that center is going to give us our h, k. Obviously the radius is 4. We're going to write down the general form of the equation of a circle. So x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. We can see that in the box on your notes. And now we're going to just plug everything in. So x minus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared is equal to, we're going to plug in the radius r, 4 squared. And we could leave it this way, but we will go ahead and square the r for a final answer. So we end up with 16. On the next question, question B, we have different information given to us. And this time we see that we have a circle K that passes through a point J and has a center K. So this time we've been given a little bit different information. Now, if you notice, they've given us a point on the circle and they've given us the center of the circle. I'm going to go ahead and label that as h, k. What they haven't given us this time is the radius. But never fear, we can find that radius because we know the radius is the distance between the center of the circle and any point on the circle. So we can use the distance formula. And so we'll set it up. Distance is equal to, and we know the formula by heart by now. If you don't, you haven't been copying it down over and over again. But great way to memorize something. And we know that this is the distance formula, but in what we're trying to use the distance formula, it's really going to give us the radius when we're done. So we're going to find the distance between these 2 points because that gives us the radius. So 6 minus 1 squared plus 4 minus negative 8 squared. So let's continue to do the math. We have 5 squared plus 12 squared. We're going to add those two together, so we have 25 plus 144, which gives us 169, which happens to be, very conveniently I might add, a perfect square. So r is equal to 13. Now remember, our objective was actually to write the equation. So we haven't done that yet, but we can. And the equation of the circle, if you remember, is x minus h, we were given the h, plus y minus k, we were also given the k, and that is equal to r squared, which is 169. And this is our equation of our circle. All right, let's move on to example number 2. We want to be able to graph a circle. Now, when we graph the circle, we're going to use the information given to us in the equation to help us out. Again, I'm going to write down the general form for the equation of a circle because it's going to help us. Looking at the general form for the equation of a circle, we see that in our equation, we don't actually have an h and a k. And when you don't have the h and the k there, that means that the center of the circle is at the origin. 0, 0. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the center of the circle at the origin. Now, the next piece of information we're going to use is the radius. And we know that r squared is equal to 16 based on the information that's given to us right there. And that means that the radius is the square root of 16, which of course is 4. So what we're going to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4 in every direction. And this is where our circle is going to go. We're going to draw it. It may not be beautiful, but we're going to do the best that we can trying to draw the circle. Definitely not beautiful. Okay? And that moves us on to question B. Now, if you want to try to challenge yourself, go ahead and pause the video right now. Write down all the important information and try to graph your circle. If not, let's just keep on going. What we're going to do is start out by identifying the center h comma k. And remember, the way that we're going to do that is we are going to recall the general form. This is what's going to guide us. So we are able to easily identify the center of the circle h comma k as 3 comma negative 4. Now you might be tempted to think it's actually 4, but we know because the form is y minus k, and let me just detour over here so you can see what I mean. If y plus 4 is equal to y minus k, we can subtract y from both sides, and we end up with 4 is equal to negative k. That means that k is equal to negative 4. And so we know that the center is at 3 comma negative 4, not 3 comma 4. Anyhow, we have found the center. The other thing that we need to identify to draw the circle is the radius, and the radius is equal to the square root of the r squared term, so that means the radius is equal to 3. We're going to go ahead and graph the circle using this information. So the center first, 3 comma negative 4, we put the center there, and then we're going to count in every direction the amount of the radius. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, looks like we're running out of graph here, but that's okay, we can still draw it in. All right, success. So if you have any questions, ask in class. Otherwise, we will move on